The world of the very first Assassin's Creed feels like a nightmare, but probably not in the sense you think I mean, and I'll get back to that feeling later. For the record, I've been a fan of this series throughout its lifetime. The first two games were perhaps my most two anticipated video games of all time, but my love for the series as a whole has definitely waxed and waned over the past 13 years. As a lover of history, adventure, and the merging of the two, the Assassin's Creed series became the sort of third-person historical deep dive that strategy game series like Total War couldn't quite give me in the same way. Where Total War was way up there, Assassin's Creed took place way down there, letting us walk among its streets, peoples, and on its rooftops. And because this series is so historically close to my heart, I thought it would be fun to dive into it and take a look at this phenomenon which has become one of extreme magnitude in the entire video game industry. And we begin, of course, with the very first game, Assassin's Creed.
I stand before you.
Let me try and stabilize it.
Assassin's Creed offers perhaps the worst intro sequence ever known to man. I guess it's true that we're put directly into control of the character, but you can't really do much. We're forced into this tutorial sequence where virtually every action in the game is explained beat for beat. It's nearly every staple of the series as well, at least for many of the games after. We learn how to blend, to use eagle vision, to walk by people without bumping into them, to escape and become anonymous, and of course, to assassinate.
With your blade selected, walk up to the soldier and assassinate him by using your armed hand button.
It might be relatively okay for a first playthrough, but since this 10 to 15 minute long tutorial is unskippable, it's a real pain to have to go through more than once. You've probably noticed that this tutorial takes place in a sort of blue void with a robotic AI voice talking to us, but we do hear people in there as well. The game really begins once we're out of this tutorial, once we really find ourselves in an actual place. We meet Altair and his companions in the catacombs of Jerusalem. They're arguing because Altair supposedly, needlessly, murdered an innocent man, an action going against the code of their order.
An excellent kill. Fortune favors your blade.
Not fortune, skill. Watch a while longer and you might learn something.
Indeed. He'll teach you how to disregard everything the Masters taught us.
And how would you have done it?
I would not have drawn attention to us. I would not have taken the life of an innocent. What I would have done is follow the creed.
Nothing is true. Everything is permitted. Understand these words. It matters not how we complete our task, only that it's done.
But this is not the way
My way is better.
This being our first meeting with Altair, it's clear that he's in a position of power here, and also that he's too arrogant for his own good. This is a theme that plays out across the game actually, and we'll see Altair confront both his own arrogance and that of others as we go. But for now, he believes that he can single-handedly take out the much larger commander of the Knights Templar, an action which ends up in the mission failing and us fleeing with our tail between our legs. We somehow make it back to Masyaf, our home and headquarters of the Assassin Order, a small town below a grand castle standing on top of a mountain. It's a grand sight indeed, and one of the only times in the series where we really get something this fantastical and awesome looking, and yet, surprise surprise, Masyaf Castle is only a slight exaggeration of the historical castle, also located on a mountaintop in Syria, once inhabited by a mysterious figure known by the nickname the Old Man of the Mountain, who led a group of Shiite Muslims known as the Assassins who murdered several Muslim and Crusader figures in the region. And I think this fact strikes at the heart of exactly why Assassin's Creed was so immensely hyped for me. I've always loved history, and never has my love for the medieval era been as strong as it was as around the year 2007. Medieval 2 was still fresh, and Kingdom of Heaven was my all-time favorite movie, director's cut edition of course. And in this teenage love affair with history, Assassin's Creed promised a dark and mysterious next-gen Holy Land adventure. Masyaf is perhaps the most visually stunning of the Assassin's Creed landscapes, if only in those first minutes. We make it back to the Old Man of the Mountain, Al-Mualim as the game calls him, meaning teacher or mentor, and tell him of our failure.
I send you, my best man, to complete a mission more important than any that has come before. And you return to me with nothing but apologies and excuses.
I did.
Do not speak! Not another word! This is not what I expected. We'll need to mount another force.
I swear to you I'll find him. I'll go in.
No! You'll do nothing. You've done enough.
Altair is arrogant, taking little blame for anything, but it seems the mission partially succeeded anyway, with our assassin friend bringing the Crusader treasure back safely. But soon after, it turns out that we have led the Templars with us, who now lay siege to the city. Much of this beginning stage is meant to show us the ropes, as we right away get to fight to defend the citizens of Masyaf. But in an all-out fight, the Crusaders are too powerful, and the assassins retreat to make use of clever tactics instead. If you haven't gone out of your way to see one yet, this will likely be the first time you get to experience the leap of faith, an action which has come to define this series more than any other. Whatever you think of it now, and you might have always thought it was a bit silly to jump from a height and land safely in a wagon of hay, this was a truly awesome thing back in 2007. Remember, this was an age where open world games were far from being the mainstream staple it is today, and the ones who offered sandboxes were rarely athletic platformers, except for dear old Jak and Daxter of course. Assassin's Creed became something of a groundbreaking game then, as its climbing mechanics made sure of, as it allowed us to move in ways we had never been able to before, in a world that was so much more realistic than any other out there. Did this game contribute to the parkour mania of the late 2000s? Perhaps. It was at least a part of the wave, no doubt because of how free and awesome it made you feel. Altair drives the Crusaders back with a little sneaky trick, but is soon reprimanded for his previous actions by Al-Mualim himself, in a scene that is supposed to make us think we are being executed.
The third and final tenet. The worst of all your betrayals. Never compromise the Brotherhood. Its meaning should be obvious. Your actions must never bring harm upon us, direct or indirect. Yet your selfish act beneath Jerusalem placed us all in danger. Worse still, you brought the enemy to our home. Every man we've lost today was lost because of you. I am sorry. Truly I am. But I cannot abide a traitor.
I am not a traitor.
Your actions indicate otherwise. And so you leave me no choice. Peace be upon you, Altair.
As soon as we're stabbed, we're taken out of this world, back to the offices of Abstergo, the company holding us captive. In many ways, I wish this was the first instance of being back in our own time. I think it would have added a certain sense of wonder to have had this great fact revealed to us only after we had experienced the simulation of the Animus, rather than just between the excruciating intro tutorials. We are of course not actually playing as Altair as he was in history, and we are indeed not in the Middle East during the 12th century. Instead, we're playing as Desmond Miles, a bartender in 2007 who has been captured by the company Abstergo and made to work his way through a simulation of the past in a machine known as the Animus. We're given a more or less full background of how everything works by our captive researcher, Warren himself. And even though it's a bit of a gimmick, I think it's a cool thing that we're actually laying down and are able to move our heads about in the Animus.
I've spent the past 30 years trying to understand why. I discovered something most fascinating. Our DNA functions as an archive. It contains not only genetic instructions passed down from previous generations, but memories as well. The memories of our ancestors.
And the Animus lets you decode and read these DNA files.
Precisely.
But Abstergo, the Animus, and everything in between is of course a mystery to us at this stage. Desmond doesn't want to be here. In fact, he's been kidnapped. And even though we're being offered bits of information here and there...
You turn the television on lately? Read the newspaper?
Never cared much for that stuff.
Then, let me sum it up for you. The world's a mess. It's pathetic, really. You've seen it firsthand yourself. 1,000 years between you and your ancestor, and society remains just as barbaric, just as stupid.
And your point is...
Order, Mr. Miles. The world needs order. That is what we're working towards, and that is what you're helping us to achieve.
You expect me to believe you're building a better tomorrow?
That's exactly what we're doing. The human race calls out for direction. They want to know why they're here, what they're meant to do. Well, we're going to tell them. And once they understand how to live their lives, everything will be better.
It's clear that much more is hidden from us, something we can actually do something about by sneaking around and listening in on conversations.
I don't appreciate your questioning my authority in front of the prisoner. There's a word for that. I believe it's called insubordination.
And I don't appreciate you trying to kill him. There's a word for that, too. I believe it's called stupid.
Lucy, this isn't my decision. I don't set the deadlines, but I'm smart enough not to challenge them.
Much of this sneaking is optional, by the way, which I think is a genuinely excellent concept, as throughout the game you're able to hack into computers of our two researchers to read emails that tell us much more than they do themselves. We jump back into the Animus, of course, only to find that we are indeed not dead. The whole thing was a trick of the mind, Al-Mualim explains.
You saw what I wanted you to see, and then you slept the sleep of the dead, of the womb, that you might awake and be reborn.
But he has stripped us of our rank and weapons as punishment for our arrogance. Fitting as punishment go when seen in contrast to execution, but I will say that it does hurt my enjoyment of the game that we're also robbed of our skills. Fundamental skills that include the almost essential ability to counterattack an enemy's strikes. This was a big misstep in my opinion, as some of these abilities won't be regained until much later in the game, and the ones we are left with in the coming hours are bare bones to say the least. The return to the Holy Land calls for another round of tutorials, a bit more active than last time, but still tedious. The kicker now though, is that the tediousness comes from the game mechanics themselves. You see, Assassin's Creed was marketed as being this completely free-roaming game where you would have to hunt down leads and informants, finding information about your targets, and really use your mind to track down unplanned assassinations. It sounds perfectly cool, even now, but Ubisoft never even came close to fulfilling that promise. Instead, we got easily discoverable missions and people that demanded we beat them up for information, pickpocket them for information, sit down on a bench and listen for information, help an assassin walk through the town while protecting them for information, or make your way from one assassin to another in a short amount of time, again, for information. You can also help out civilians here and there from local guards, who will help you in return, but the main reason to help them is to shut up the extremely annoying yelling of the guards that just never stops unless you do something about it. There are actually no or very few actual tailing missions in this first game, if you can believe it. At least I can't seem to list any, but if you can, make sure to let me know in the comments. Either way, these missions to get to your target is virtually everything that makes up the missions of Assassin's Creed. There are no real side missions other than finding flags and killing Templars here and there, and even though that can be fun at times, it really doesn't add much to the game. And because of this, Assassin's Creed, mission-wise, is bare bones and tedious at best, and is definitely the AC game to age by far the worst in this sense, with little to no tangible replay value. No, the missions of Assassin's Creed are definitely not what stayed with me, at least not in a good sense, nor what impressed me when playing it again all these years later. What genuinely wowed me back in 2007, and somehow managed to impress me now, was the world itself. The game finally truly opens when we're done with Masyaf, once we're given a horse and can finally ride off into the countryside among ancient Roman ruins, mountains, and waving flags of either the Saracens or the Crusaders. Assassin's Creed actually offers perhaps the best horse riding mechanic in the entire series, challenged only by Assassin's Creed 2, I think, which is incidentally one of my biggest grievances of the post-Origins games, might I add. You better get horse riding right in your horse riding game, and Assassin's Creed did just that. It made it a pleasure to ride through the lands of the kingdoms and stand atop the hills overlooking the first major city we reach, Damascus. Damascus is colorful and beautiful, and represents the game's fully Muslim city. Even though it sports a rich, middle, and poor district, just like every other city in the game, Damascus itself oozes prosperity and wealth, as illustrated by its artistic towers and minarets, grand mosques, and beautiful canals. Only the first district is open to us now, as each act of the game reveals another, but we don't need much to understand that this is a grand city. Compared to more modern Assassin's Creeds or even certain other games at the time like GTA, Damascus and every other city in this game might seem small or indeed empty in terms of things to do. But in 2007, there was little else like this in terms of detail, realism, and visuals. Damascus is where we truly get to play around for the first time, finally climbing the houses and towers we want, scouting across the city to reveal new spots of interest, only to time and time again jump gracefully into a bale of hay. It never managed to get old for me during that first game, partially because the gameplay itself felt so real. And real is indeed the word here, I think, because whether in movement, city layouts, or combat, Assassin's Creed amazed me with its realism. There were no real health bars over enemies' heads, no numbers to calculate or pay attention to, and to kill an enemy could be done through a few different ways. Hitting them repeatedly with timed strikes executed a finishing move, each more stylish than the last. You could throw your enemy into a stack of wood to crush them immediately, countering them with initiate an execution move, or throw knives which took most enemies out instantly. There were some inconsistencies or frustrating moments though, like when you have no way to counter an enemy's counter, or even their strike, oftentimes from the more powerful enemies. The combat system was satisfying then, as long as it worked in your favor because it made everything feel smooth and real, but became more frustrating when enemies were suddenly unstoppable and countering them was out of your hands. Of course, we mustn't forget about the most essential part of this game, the Assassinations. Assassin's Creed offers two modes of playing essentially, a low mode and a high mode, where the former is silent and for walking, and the latter more open and louder while running. Each mode has a corresponding assassination mode, so whatever the situation calls for, you better use. But even the assassinations are lackluster in this game, as I'll reveal to you something you just might have forgotten. You can in fact not natively assassinate someone from a ledge in this game, nor from a hiding spot, and nor from above. The latter can be done by staying in high mode and being lucky with your jumps, but other than that, there's no intuitive way to do it. All of this was introduced in the second game, which makes it a rather jarring experience to return to the original. Anyway, the first assassination is probably the one I remember the best, likely because it's so visceral. Assassin's Creed is one of the series' most brutal games in many ways, partially because of its brutality and the way it's translated through its graphics. On this first occasion, Guy 1 is talking to Guy 2, and they're having an argument about a missing shipment. We find ourselves in this beautiful square with running water, and it all ends up with this barbaric public stabbing, turning the water red. The scene is imprinted on my memory because of this, but what's worse, and also so great, is the speed with which we can assassinate this guy. One little stabbing is all it takes, showing both the realistic and anticlimactic nature of Assassin's Creed. The fact that we spent all this time hunting down these people, only to dispose of them in the blink of an eye, doesn't really make for great memories or memorable characters. The game does try though, introducing another series staple, the post-death confessions. This is where we get the villain's speech, 9 times over. Now I think this is a really interesting concept, because at this point, the villains know that they're dead. They have nothing to lose and nothing to hide, but instead of reveling in their evilness, virtually each and every victim explains their motives, talking about a larger picture and greater cause, means to ends and how they're actually the good guys.
You think me some petty death dealer, suckling at the breast of war? A strange target, don't you think? Why me, when so many others do the same?
You believe yourself different then?
Oh, but I am. For I serve a far nobler cause than mere profit. Just like my brothers.
More than confessions, they're moments of learning for Altair. And with every step they strip away his arrogance and his assuredness of himself, and makes him a more reflected person. This character development is perhaps the strongest narrative side of Assassin's Creed, aside from the grander theme itself, and is reflected in Altair's friends as well, if we can call them that. You see, before you can begin any of the assassination intelligence gathering, you must go to the local Assassin's Bureau in the city, talking to the man in charge there. The most notable of these are Malik, who runs the operation in Jerusalem. Malik was in fact our accomplice in the Jerusalem heist in the beginning, and even lost his arm because of Altair's arrogance. When we first meet him again, he's understandably mad at us, not expecting much or even dismissing our efforts outright.
Talal himself should prove little challenge.
Little challenge? Listen to you. Such arrogance.
Are we finished? Are you satisfied with what I've learned?
No, but it will have to do. Rest, prepare, cry in the corner. Do whatever it is you do before a mission. Only make sure you do it quietly.
But as time goes on and as Altair matures and softens, so does Malik. He recognizes that Altair is a different man altogether now, and this relationship is one of, if not the only, Genuinely great character and relationship developments in the entire game.
Fortune favor your blade, brother.
Malik, before I go, there's something I should say.
Be out with it.
I've been a fool.
Normally I'd make no argument, but what is this? What are you talking about?
All this time, I never told you I was sorry. Too damn proud. You lost your arm because of me. Lost Qadar. You had every right to be angry.
I do not accept your apology.
I understand.
No, you don't. I do not accept your apology because you are not the same man who went with me into Solomon's temple. And so you have nothing to apologize for.
Malik.
Perhaps if I had not been so envious of you, I would not have been so careless myself. I'm just as much to blame.
Don't say such things.
We are one. As we share the glory of our victories, so too should we share the pain of our defeat. In this way, we grow closer. We grow stronger.
Thank you, brother.
Rest if you need to, Altair, that you might be ready for what lies ahead.
It makes me happy to hear Malik speak his change of heart, and his confirming words makes it feel like Altair really has changed over the course of the story. Speaking of assassins, bureaus, and cities, every city in the game has its own single unique track that plays when you arrive and sometimes while you are there. It's not nearly as immersive as the music tracks in the Ezio saga, but they're all masterpieces in their own right. Damascus has this very large and awe-inspiring Arabian Nights feel to it, a hint of the grandeur of Saladin's empire, you might say. Jerusalem is different. Being as it is a city of much more history, of different worlds and religions, it sports a more calm, even melancholic, yet hopeful track. From atop the hills outside the city walls you can see the Dome of the Rock, but walking its streets is another thing entirely. Here, churches and mosques stand not a stone's throw away from one another. The Dome of the Rock up close is beautiful, its gold-plated roof and mosaics as stunning as ever, separated only by a wall from the much more modest Jewish temple. On the other side of the city lies the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and coming from the very Muslim city of Damascus to this more multicultural city is quite the change. And then of course we have Akka, the Crusader city which bears significant scars of recent battles. Here there are churches aplenty, sporting the largest cathedral with the highest point in the game actually, and a cool fortress at the very edge of the city really gives you that medieval vibe. I also love the city's harbor, which just oozes activity and a sense of a crusade on its own. But it's also important to take note of Assassin's Creed's color palette here, as the game really loves to play with filters. Where Damascus is warm and golden, Acre is dark and blue. It's as big a tonal shift as possible in this game, and if the depravity of the seas and screaming Germans aren't enough, it really underscores how terrible of a place this really is. The first assassination target in this city is literally a mad scientist priest belonging to the Knights Hospitaller, the knights sworn to care for the sick and poor. But flipping this on its head, this guy is absolutely insane, running an experimental facility where the patients are unfortunate souls used as some kind of experiments. Apart from the Damascus target, this really is the second most memorable target in my mind, as the brutality and just plain disgusting nature of it all is almost unmatched in the series going forward. But even this man justifies his actions, saying he's preparing the sick for a new world.
I'll rest now, yes. The endless dream calls to me. But before I close my eyes, I must know what will become of my children.
You mean the people made to suffer your cruel experiments? They'll be free now to return to their homes.
Homes? What homes? The sewers? The brothels? The prisons that we dragged them from?
You took these people against their will.
Yes. What little will there was for them to have.
As Altair kills and hears new stories, and subsequently returns to Al-Mualim, there isn't necessarily a lot revealed to us about what is going on. But we do get a somewhat deeper understanding of the world, of life lessons or the wrongness of being blind to everything around your own cause or beliefs.
You heal the hearts and minds of those who live within.
Our enemies would disagree.
What do you mean?
Each man I've slain has confessed strange words to me. They are without regret. Even in death they seem confident of their success. Though they do not admit it directly, there is a tie that binds them. I'm sure of it.
There is a difference, Altair, between what we are told to be true and what we see to be true. Most men do not bother to make the distinction. It is simpler that way. But as an assassin, it is your nature to notice, to question.
Then what is it that connects these men?
But as an assassin, it is also your duty to still these thoughts and trust in your master. For there can be no true peace without order, and order requires authority.
You speak in circles, Master. You commend me for being aware, then ask me not to be. Which is it?
The question will be answered when you no longer need to ask it.
The talks with Al-Mualim are not necessarily enlightening, but they do restore our ranks, weapons, and abilities, so at least are good for making the game better. After every third kill, we're kind of forced to return to the Abstergo offices and out of the Animus itself. What I find kind of weird, and where I'm probably at odds with much of the ACE community, is that I actually love the modern day side of the story in these first games. The interplay between our captors Warren and Lucy adds a massive sense of mystery and stake to the game, as every bit of progress we make in the Animus somehow makes it more dangerous for us to live in the real world. We know virtually nothing of where we are, why we are here, nor what will happen to us or what Abstergo is working towards, only that none of it is good, and that makes the entire difference.
I'm pretty sure it just ejected me
I'm
when
pretty sure you should shut up.
You ready to finally tell me what's going on?
We have to stop them, Desmond. When they access that last memory of yours, they're just getting started. They want to change everything. The way we live, the way we think, the way we are. You've gotten the lecture from Vidic about what's wrong with the world, how we need order and discipline, so they're going to give it to us. Only we don't have a say in the matter.
How?
The Templar treasure. They think it...
Miss Stillman?
I'm here.
I need you to upload Desmond's files to the database.
Got it.
Warren is the main bad guy here, as Lucy is someone we're more comfortable talking to, and who also seems comfortable talking to us. But Warren changes the most throughout the game, beginning off with great confidence and enthusiasm.
Rise and shine. We've got quite a day ahead of us.
You're in a good mood this morning.
Miss Stillman has made some modifications to the Animus. You should be able to remain inside even longer now.
And help you with your treasure hunt.
This is serious business, Mr. Miles. I don't think you fully appreciate the work that Abstergo does.
Maybe because I don't actually know what you people do.
We change the world, every day, in 100 different ways. Did you know that nearly every single breakthrough of the past millennia, be it medical, mechanical, or philosophical, has come from Abstergo or its predecessors?
While turning more and more frustrated and angry as time goes by.
Stop undermining my authority!
I just saved your ass.
Let's go. We've got a lot of work to do. Don't get too comfortable, Mr. Miles. We'll be back for you soon enough.
I think the key to why Assassin's Creed Modern Times storyline works so well is because there's so much of it. What's there works to make the entire game better. It doesn't seem like filler, but functions as an integral part of the story. In this way, you kind of want to go back to the modern day when you're in the Animus for some of that mystery, and you want to go back to the Animus for more gameplay. There's a serious tone to everything, with no awkward jokes or out-of-place Marvel-like one-liners ruining anything, and I think that's the key to creating the tension present at Abstergo. Back in the Holy Land, there are some villains who change things up a bit, and I've picked out 3 of them. The first is Majd ad-Din, the ruler of Jerusalem. Having abused his power and held public executions on a whim, ad-Din does something none of the other targets have done thus far. Rather than explain away his motives, Adin admits to doing what he does simply because he can.
No! It had only just begun!
Tell me, what's your part in all of this? Do you intend to defend yourself as the others have and explain away your evil deeds?
The Brotherhood wanted the city. I wanted power.
You'd kill people simply for believing differently than you.
Of course not. I killed them because I could. Because it was fun. Do you know what it feels like to determine another man's fate? And did you see the way that people cheered? The way they feared me? I was like a god. You'd have done the same if you could. Such power.
Once perhaps. But then I learned what becomes of those who lift themselves above others.
And what is that?
Here, let me show you.
Whether Adin was the only one to actually speak the truth is hard to say, but it's a stark contrast from the others who talked about means and ends, to one who simply liked playing God. Immediately following the assassination is when we get our first true glimpse and knowledge of what the entire game revolves around, the Piece of Eden, also known as the Apple of Eden. This is a treasure that the Crusaders seek, one they had in the beginning of the game, the very same one Al-Mualim wanted for himself. He explains the significance and importance of this object in no uncertain terms, and this also explains the reason why we are here, why Desmond Miles has been captured, and the memories we are trying to reach by playing through the memories of Altair.
But they cannot succeed in their mission.
Why is that?
Their plans depend upon the Templar treasure, the Piece of Eden. But we hold it now, and they cannot hope to achieve their goals without it.
What is this treasure?
It is temptation.
It's just a piece of silver.
Look at it.
What am I supposed to see?
This piece of silver cast out Adam and Eve. It turned staves into snakes, parted and closed the Red Sea. Eris used it to start the Trojan War, and with it a poor carpenter turned water into wine.
It seems rather plain for all the power you claim it has. How does it work?
He who holds it commands the hearts and minds of whoever looks upon it, whoever tastes of it, as they say.
The second is a nice Templar commander, Robert de Sable himself, who's been the main villain of the game. When we first try to assassinate him, it turns out that he's not present at all. A woman has taken his place, explaining that de Sable foresaw the assassination, and that the assassins have made enemies of both the Christians and Muslims by murdering important figures on both sides.
We cannot deny your success. You have laid waste to our plans. First the treasure, then our men. Control of the Holy Land slipped away. But then he saw an opportunity to reclaim what has been stolen, to turn your victories to our advantage.
Al-Mualim still holds your treasure, and we've routed your army before. Whatever Robert plans, he'll fail again.
Ah, but it's not just Templars you'll contend with now.
Speak sense.
Robert rides for Asa to plead his case that Saracen and Crusader unite against the Assassins.
It's an interesting situation, and one that significantly raises the stakes towards the end. It results in Altair riding for Arsuf to intercept King Richard's army before they march on Masyaf along with Saladin. There we meet de Sable, fight his men and him, and finally kill the man himself. But in his death, a larger truth is revealed, that Al-Mualim himself is one of the Templars, and that he has instructed Altair to systematically kill off every other person who knew of the Apple of Eden.
What of it?
It wasn't 9 who found the treasure, assassin. Not 9, but 10. It is your master, Al-Mualim.
But he is not a Templar.
Did you never wonder how it is he knew so much? Where to find us, how many we numbered, what we aspired to attain?
He is the master of the Assassins.
Oui, master of lies. You and I just 2 more pawns in his grand game. And now, with my death, only you remain.
We talk to Richard following de Sable's death, and share at least a few words of comfort.
Well fought, assassin! It seems God favors your cause this day.
God had nothing to do with it. I was the better fighter.
You may not believe in him, but it seems he believes in you.
The third and final unique villain is Al-Mualim himself, who by now has bent the entirety of Masyaf to his will. Masyaf is a dark and unwelcome place this time, filled with what seems like brainwashed people standing around in a uniquely eerie way.
Where is everyone?
Gone to see the Master.
Was it the Templars? Did they attack again?
They walk the path.
What path? What are you talking about?
Towards the light.
Speak sense.
There is only what the Master shows us. This is the truth.
You've lost your mind.
You too will walk the path, or you will perish.
We link up with Malik, who leads a band of assassins who manage to retain their independent minds, fight our way through, enter the castle courtyard, and find Al-Mualim on the other side, who's all too happy to finally play the villain.
So, the student returns.
I've never been one to run.
Never been one to listen either.
I still live because of it.
What will I do with you?
Let me go.
Oh, Altair. I hear the hatred in your voice. Feel its heat. Let you go? Well, that would be unwise.
Why are you doing this?
I found proof.
Proof of what?
That nothing is true. And everything is permitted.
He somehow summons every character we have assassinated so far, who are now rather easy to take care of before fighting us himself. Just like every other fight in this game, Al-Mualim isn't really a hard fight, but what makes him potentially difficult is the fact that he drains nearly all your health when meeting each of his versions, meaning that if you're unlucky, you'll run into him a little too fast and get one-shotted. Bar that though, he's an easy one to defeat. He too defends himself in the end, talking about the Apple of Eden as something that could end wars and create true peace.
You held fire in your hand, old man. It should have been destroyed.
Destroy the only thing capable of ending the Crusades and creating true peace? Never.
Then I will.
We'll see about that.
The scene I love the most though is when the apple reveals some of its power to Altair, showing him a projection of the world in a time when seeing the full extent of our globe in this way would be unfathomable. In reality, this is the map Abstergo has been looking for this whole time, and the locations pinpointed on this map actually concludes our journey with Altair. We're quickly taken out of the Animus, waking up to a conversation between our handlers and what seems like their bosses, but you'll only see who you're talking to if you make use of the game's change scene feature, where you'll actually see 3 men in suits standing in another room. They actually demand Desmond's death now that he's of no use to them anymore, but he's saved by Lucy, who suggests that there might be more value to him should they require his memories further down the line.
We have what we need. Kill him.
Wait. You know how these things work. I doubt we'll be able to walk right in.
What's your point?
We might need him. His memories. I'd recommend we hold him until we have confirmation that there aren't any surprises waiting for us at the sites.
This is a waste of time.
You said it yourself. We shouldn't leave anything to chance.
Very well. Ensure we have no further need of him, then kill him.
Fine.
Once the conversation is over, we're left with a sort of unspoken revelation. It is revealed to both him and the player that he too can now use Eagle Vision, and by doing so, he can see what appears to be blood smeared all over the floor, even above his bed. It's freaky and mysterious, detailing accounts of the abyss and strange markings and foreign languages.
It looks like... is that blood? The hell were they keeping here before me? And what happened to him? What does it mean, I wonder?
And then, the game is over, and we had to wait a long 2 years for the next game in the series to drop. Assassin's Creed is a game of ups and downs, of unfulfilled potential and some awesome innovations. I began this review by stating that the game feels like a nightmare, and I want to elaborate on that. For you see, there's something unintentionally eerie about this game. In contrast to later games in the series, Assassin's Creed's cities and citizens are so devoid of life and personality that it gives everything a sense of roboticism and of a dream where nothing is as it really should be.
Family's sick and dying. Could you spare a few coins? I beg of you, sir. I beg of you. Just a few coins, please.
The fact that soldiers will attack you simply because you run past them is a travesty, and not only helps to provide you with one too many headaches, but contributes to the sense that soldiers in this world are soulless Mr. Smith-like AI agents actively looking to eradicate you and remove you from its systems. It kind of feels like the game is a giant tech demo of what's to come. Here we have large, beautiful cities, but nothing really happens in them. There's no semblance of actual life, of commerce or people having purpose, or there actually being fun things to do. People move around from here to there, but the audio quality of the voices are so bad you might think they were recorded in the 70s.
We will march on Jerusalem next. We must end this before it has a chance to begin. That city is ours, has always been ours. And it is our duty to defend it until death.
They say the same things over and over again in the exact same way, as if programmed to do so, which of course they are. But the fact that everything is so out in the open, that there is so little effort put into breaking through the endless repetition and mundane statements really makes that all the more evident. Every city has its own filter forced down its neck, and the music will often be silent for several minutes at a time, meaning that you're all alone in these very distinct, dreamlike landscapes that share few similarities with each other. Every person you ever meet on the streets of the Holy Land are desperate or in dire need of help lest they be murdered, which they of course never will be if you never intervene, which again heightens that sense of time standing still or having no real sense, again as you were in a dream or an uncanny valley. There is an urgency there, made clear by the screams of the guards or the victims, but nothing happens if you don't take action. The only really unpredictable people here are the ones who have lost their minds forever walking the streets, who will appear genuinely scared and who will attack you out of nowhere if you come too close.
Listen to the fool fraud.
Except for the development of the relationship with Malik, there really isn't any happiness to ever be found in this game. Al-Mualim brings nothing but teachings and cryptic words. Each assassination target is more horrible than the next, and Altair makes no friends or meets any person where we get a sense of personality or friendly behavior or exchange. I couldn't point to one character actually smiling or laughing in this game for other than some evil or villainous purpose, and it really speaks to the depressing atmosphere of this entire world. The kingdom routes themselves, supposed to be beautiful, rather tranquil places where we travel between cities, are ridden with enemy soldiers who will attack you on sight due to the game's horrible wanted system. The color palette is dark and shaded, and the music is often more mysterious and calming. Even the Assassin's Creed itself, the mantra of nothing is true, everything is permitted, is cold and lifeless, almost an admission of actions having no consequences or time having no meaning in this world, as if the game says to us that you indeed exist outside of reality, where truth have meaning and is understood to exist, and where everything is permitted seems more like a madman's justification than a proper code to live by. Even when playing as Desmond, there isn't really any happiness or light to be found. You're stuck in what essentially amounts to 2 or 3 square sterile rooms, one being your bedroom and the other being the Animus experiment room, both of which are places we are forced to remain in against our will. Here we're oppressed by our kidnappers, and there's no music here other than the calm, indifferent humming of the computers forcing personal memories out of our mind. All this amounts to the sense that Assassin's Creed is actually a nightmare, where parts of reality come together to form an incomplete and eerie whole, one that seems real and not real at the same time, where it's too easy to notice the flaws to be truly comfortable spending time in this world. I never managed to put my fingers on it before, but I think I managed to do so right now. When the game first came out, I loved it for its authenticity compared to other games in the genre, its graphics and adulterated depiction of the medieval era. I noticed the flaws but could see past them. But now, I still value the realism of the combat system and some of the game's spectacular views, but other than that, Assassin's Creed remains something of an unfinished, uninspired, and uninteresting game when looking past its biggest selling points. As of now, which likely will remain the case in the future, there really is no reason to play Assassin's Creed if you're not doing it for story reasons or for some sense of nostalgia. If there's one thing that miraculously still kind of holds up, it has to be the graphics, which actually managed to be so much more advanced looking than its sequel, which in many ways, sadly, but also wisely so, decided to downgrade aspects of its visuals for playability and actual content. In the end, I appreciate what Assassin's Creed tried to do, and how it paved the way for some truly awesome games, and frankly, how it ultimately popularized the open world genre. It really brought something new and innovative in terms of ideas back in 2007, despite being a disappointing game itself. And yet, I can't help but be at least a little charmed by what it is, how it took a minimalist approach to UI, and how the combat system was so much more realistic than anything I'd ever seen. I generally love how the game set up the modern day story, which brought so much more mystery to the game and a whole new layer of intrigue and conspiracy. Assassin's Creed was a great idea executed just rather badly, but man, if it didn't set the stage for some of the most awesome storytelling gaming has ever seen, and in fascinating historical settings at that, which I believe we continue to need in this fantastic industry going forward. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this trip down memory lane with me, even though there were a whole lot of flaws to talk about. But, at least for me, this felt really cathartic. Assassin's Creed is definitely a game that has meant a lot to me, but still one that remains flawed and disappointing. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on both this video and the game itself, so please make sure to leave a comment below. If you enjoyed the video, I hope you leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. It would really help me out, and would allow me to continue making more videos just like this one, and others. And finally, if you'd like to see more Assassin's Creed reviews, then please make sure to let me know. We also have a Discord now which I'd love for you to join, and the link is left in the description. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!